All right, so we can see that we're in our first round of primer, high build primer, epoxy primer, and headed towards paint color at some point, but needless to say, we are making good progress here. That'd be hard top sides, doors, kick panels for the cowl, and we use the stock steel kick panel for the cowl, by the way. There's a header bar over here for the hard top, but looks really good. And again, the steel on this project was in great shape. You can see we flattened out that lip. We showed you that earlier. And back here in the quarter panel, this is the usual deficit spot for almost all Land Cruiser FJ40s. They all often will rust out right there. I don't know if there's a rhyme or reason. I've just noticed it for the last, 30 years, but typically up in here we're in fine shape. It's back there. Then we have the aluminum windshield frame here as well on the epoxy surfacer primer. These will come out. We'll bring another round of body panels in for the process, and then we'll go through more sanding, and then we're going to probably head into another round of primer sealer and then paint color. So we have the hard top sides back out of the booth, and we are doing a little bit more body work and sanding of the surfacer primer epoxy. I won't walk in there. You can see Alex in there working nicely on his portion, front door. So just a lot of sanding going on, which is pretty typical for any project that we're doing, body work. And you can see as we pan around here, a lot of things are queued up. The other doors are over there. We have rear ambulance doors. I don't think I shot those yet in video, but those are there as well. So it is about body work and paint at this point. The body tub will be coming off shortly. All right, sitting here in the spray booth, a bunch of, looks like tables with paper all around them, are the parts that were all initially primered, and we're going to do another round of primer, high build primer. The first round of sand is done on them, and you can see that we have doors, hardtop sides, and ambulance doors all nicely lined up, as well as a windshield frame here. So next round is going to be a high build primer. That'll be the last of the primers, and that'll bring us to paint color. So just great to see here, nicely taped out. The reason why we're doing this is that on the other side is the primer as well, but we don't want to overspray, and the process is such that we do one side at a time. Okay, arriving are the front fenders, aprons, and we had the front aluminum grille, but you can see the mock-up of the front end is going along nicely, and we have the hood here as well. This mock-up allows us, again, to do things like, scratch surfaces if we have to in order to move things around and make sure things are fitting before we take it apart and do a lot of our body work and paint. So, needless to say, that's what we have here. Really nice to see. So you can see that we have our mock-up pretty much done here with a lot of the things that go on the front fenders, aprons, turn signals, bezel, headlights, buckets, badges, things like that. We have our aluminum front fenders and apron. We have the hood up here, prop rod, all sitting fine. Engine, there's more things to be done in the engine compartment, but for the most part, the mock-up of the big global type things is complete, and we've already shown you this, but we have a lot of the populated seats, jump seats, and roll cage and things of that nature. The last thing we're going to be doing here is just cutting out the dash. We've had the hardtop and the doors and all that type of stuff, and we had body work and primer being done on all those things, but for the most part, this is nice to see completed. So what we have here are stock factory brackets that sit underneath a stock set of steel front fenders, and so we took them off of the original front fender and have just media blasted them, and we're going to be using these to support the aluminum front fender. The aluminum front fender does not come with a support bracket, and sometimes we make our own out of aluminum, other times we're using the stock steel. In this instance we're going to use the stock steel, and all it is just a support that goes right here underneath, and a lot of times you'll see it come here. A lot of Land Cruiser front fenders will rust right here. It'll just bubble right there, mainly because that bracket on a steel front fender allows for material to just sit there and water and puddle over a period of years or decades. Gives you a problem. Well, with aluminum, no longer the case. So you can see we have one of the front doors here. Alex is sanding away, scuffing the primer, getting ready for another round of primer sealer and ultimately paint color. So again, doors were in great shape. It's all about the details, and that's what we're seeing here. A lot of sanding of the primer has been going on, and we're just taking a lot of these doors and other pieces and lining them up, getting them ready to clean, and then they'll go into paint color ultimately. And we can see here in the sunshine, nice sandings going on as well, with different windshield frame, hard top sides. A lot of stuff being sanded out, which is great. So moving forward, head towards paint color shortly. With each passing day we have more body panels being final sanded and in the collection here in the corner, and what we'll do ultimately is bring them in and shoot them in final paint color. But the other day you saw those panels. We've added hard top sides, windshield, aprons, and the like. So more and more is going on. And again, what we do is we pick the panels that have been fitted, mocked up, and then we bring them right into the dirty room here. And you can see that we're diligently working away on different panels. We have front fenders being done here, sanded out. And the good news about these aluminum front fenders is that they need very, very little body work. They're pretty true to form, and there's not a lot of warps and things. When we're using original steel, say, front fenders from the factory, they get a lot of low spots just because of the transportation, the way they work. Obviously, this is a heavier gauge metal, being aluminum versus steel. So that lends itself to being, staying very true. The manufacturing's accurate. Also, we have the front fenders over here as well. So, yeah, front grille, and you can see we did our nut certs here in order that we're able to screw in the bezel that goes on here as well. So that's a nice little touch. A nut cert basically is a way of putting a nut into a piece of metal that otherwise doesn't exist and isn't welded on the other side. You just put it in and you almost like pop rivet like you would, say, a rivet, excuse me. So that's coming into a little bit of scuffing, and then we'll get this over. These will go into a round of primer as well. These are all just raw aluminum right at this point. And as you saw earlier, we're using his stock steel brackets from the original fenders underneath here. So that's a very nice touch that we're adding. All right, here's the hood. We have that in primer as well, and that's underneath. The primer is not quite done. We got to do a round of primer underneath, but up top here, that's all complete. So the hood is looking sharp, and as you've seen, this will go into another round of primer underneath. Then we'll go final sand and then paint color there as well. Prep work starts on the fiberglass top here, and for the most part it's in pretty darn good shape. What we're doing is we're going through and sanding off a real thin coat of gel coat, and we'll get down and plug some holes that were there, so that way the holes will be done with a Bondo. We may actually even use a little fiberglass there as well, but either way the perimeter itself is fine. Perimeter is made up of a number of rivets. You can see them here along this flange. They actually, intensify along the edge. The early model years and later model years, there's, more rivets or less rivets depending on the model year, but for the most part, there must be about 120 around, and that's what the flange, the steel flange, the flange of the perimeter goes on to make up the rain gutter. So either way, we're just getting here to the point, cleaning this up and getting it into primer. work continues, and you can see that we have the dash all mocked up at this point for the most part, and we are going to be basically installing a stock dash throughout this. And this is a Dakota Digital RTX right here, and they make a great dash. We've been using a lot of these. They modernize, they look like their traditional dash, but it's all basically an LED type of readout here in the middle with some of the gauges that are lit up at night. A much better system. We also have the stock pulls across here, ashtray, glove box, heater box in here. Things are all set up from a stock standpoint, so this is going to allow us to get this much closer so that we can take this apart and start to work on finishing out the rest of this as far as the interior goes. That's the camera. We're going to be basically painting the outside. We're going to be bed lining the inside and underneath as well. So watch as we move towards that, but needless to say, the dash is looking quite nice.